When I was a little girl, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. My dad was a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, and so I grew up a military kid. I lived on active Air Force bases, and I moved every 2 years of my life. And so I heard planes taking off every single day of my life, all day long. So I knew as a little girl I wanted to be in aviation. The problem was that I didn't know what I could do in aviation. Because way back in the day, whenever I would see aviators depicted in TV or film or magazines or anything like that, I would see if you were a man, you were a pilot. And if you were a female, you were a flight attendant. But none of those pictures ever looked like me. And so though I knew what I wanted to do, I honestly didn't know what I could do because I'd never seen a person of color depicted as an aviator. And so fast forward, my very first job, I ended up parking planes and loading luggage at the Boston Logan Airport. That was my very first job. And then what I would do for overtime to make extra money is I would go work upstairs at the ticket counter, checking people in for their flights. Now, the airline that I worked for, leaders, in the city of Boston, it had a really big presence. And so our executives, I'd see the executives flying in and out of the city all the time and in and out of the airport. And so I knew who they were because they were the leaders. But I didn't think they knew who I was. And so one day, I was at the ticket counter checking customers in, and one of our VPs of sales, his name was Jim. Jim came over to me. And Jim was like this little short white guy, right? He's like my height. And he had like this white, silver as a fox kind of hair. And he had an incredibly thick accent, Southern accent. And so when I was at the ticket counter, Jim came over to me and he said, if we were stereotyping Jim, we'd call him a good old boy from the South, okay? And so he said to me, he said, Stephanie, every time I come to this airport, I see you. I see you checking customers in with a smile on your face. I think you should be in sales. Now, I didn't know anything about sales, but I respected Jim. And I'm so glad that Jim and I had that conversation many, many, many years ago. Jim was a good old boy from the South, born and raised in the 1940s. He had been pre-programmed on how he saw people like me. I was a young black girl born in the 1960s, living all over the place, but I too had been pre-programmed on how I saw good old boys from the South. And yet Jim and I had a conversation that was higher level, that took us from here to here. And it's because of that one conversation, leaders, that I can stand here in front of you as the first black person ever in U.S. history to run and lead a major private aviation company. Jim was one leader. We had one conversation, and together we changed history. So now what about you? What about you, leaders? Will you start to have conversations with your people that connect? They're not asking for a lot. They're asking for your time, your attention, your mentorship. They're asking for you. You do that, and you never know how you might change history for someone that you lead, or maybe for yourself. Talent is the thing on every company's mind right now. But I'm excited because as I stand in front of you now, my heart is super full, because what I see, leaders, is I see the newest members of the movement. Leaders who are committed to adapting their leadership through brain hacking so they become better communicators and thus better leaders.